Well, good evening, everyone. Well, afternoon, evening, I don't really know where the crossover is, but never mind. And welcome to yet another virtual Technoclub. So, what are we doing today? Well, I promised that today I would do a little bit about designing websites, but not just creating, not just HTML. A little bit about what it actually means to go in and make a website. And I've got a little bit of experience in this. I've been making websites since I was about 16 or so. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit tricky. And in fact, that's why it's such a popular option for a job. And that's why web developers can end up learning lots of money, once they've learned things and are pretty skilled. So before we can go on, we have to really talk about what makes up a website. And there's three things. You've got the infrastructure, the back end, and the front end. And the infrastructure is where all the actual means, how your website is displayed to the world. When it comes to making websites, you can either host them locally, that means it's on your machine, you're the only person who can see it, or you can host them to the whole world, the World Wide Web. And it's both of those require the infrastructure. So the word hosting here refers to where your website is stored, whether it's on your computer, or whether it's a server in America, or whether it's anywhere in the world. The domain is the name of your website, the something.com or .co.uk or .org. The security, you need to have a certificate with every website to prove that you are who you say you are. Okay, so the first three things I've mentioned, you can find them for free, and it's easy to find them for free. You have to do a Google search yourself, but a lot of them you have to pay for. Now, every year I pay about 50 English pounds for my website, so it can get quite expensive. But if you do manage to find a free option for those, and that free option is trustworthy, it's not someone trying to scam you, then that's okay too. If you're hosting on your own machine, then you don't really need security or domain or hosting if it's local to yourself. But as soon as you're trying to get out onto the actual internet itself, that's where security comes in really important. Another thing I like to mention here is whois, or who is. And it's very important that if you do decide to host a website on the whole World Wide Web, that you are whois protected. And all whois is it is a way of finding out who owns a website. So if you open terminal and I say who is google.co.uk. Oh, sorry, forget that. I forgot I'm on Windows. I always do that. So if you go who is google.co.uk, it'll produce a whois report. And it tells you who is google.co.uk. Now, it's very important that when you're setting this up, you don't include any of your personal details in there, because that means anybody could see them. Anybody in the entire world can type in whois and the name of your website, and they'll see all your details. So you need to either put a fake name in there, or you need to protect yourself against that. But we're not going to worry about that today. That's all about making a website to go on the World Wide Web. We're going to look instead at more of the front end side of things. So the back end is where all the things that the user doesn't see lies. And the front end is everything that the user sees. And you've got HTML, CSS, and you can have a little bit of JavaScript or things like that. Now, before I go on, if you're always looking for more HTML stuff, if you pop over to the Technocamps website, technocamps.com/activity packs, Randall, who's one of the Technocamps team members down at Swansea, has made a fantastic activity pack on making HTML. And if you just scroll down the page, HTML activity pack there. And that goes through the basics. And the other website to look out for is W3 Schools. Now, W3 are the World Wide Web Consortium, and that was set up by Tim Berners-Lee, the person who invented and designed the way that the World Wide Web works. So they're always good people to look at. But enough gibbering on, let's actually go ahead and make something. Now for this, you're going to need a text editor and a browser. Now if you're on Windows, the standard text editor is of course Notepad. That should be familiar. But if you're on Mac, I think the default text editor is called TextEdit. I'm going to go one above, and I'm going to use Notepad++. You can use any one you like, but I'm very comfortable with Notepad++ because it actually highlights things for me. And we're going to start with a new blank empty file. And the first thing we're doing when we're creating the website is we need to tell it that we're using HTML. So you want a less than symbol, exclamation mark, doc type, all in capitals, HTML, and a close greater than symbol. Now, HTML is a tagged it's a tagged markup language, and that means that everything is surrounded by tags. We have a start tag and an end tag, and the tags use the less than symbol and the greater than symbol. And throughout the course of this, I'm going to accidentally call them brackets. That's just because I make mistakes. But, brackets, tags, less than symbol, greater than symbol, whatever I call them, just know that every tag starts with one, that it starts with a less than symbol, ends with a greater than symbol. Let's start with our first tag. And the very first tag, and it's required for HTML to work properly, is the head tag. So on the next line, next couple of lines, well, first I need to say I'm actually writing HTML. So I'm going to start a HTML tag. That stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And I just have a less than symbol, HTML, followed by a greater than symbol. Now, it's always good practice, and it's going to stop you making the most mistakes, is every time you start a tag, you immediately write the end tag. And then you fill in the details in between. So I'm going to write the end tag for HTML before I've written anything else. Because you never know, you could be writing a nice little bit of HTML and you've forgotten a tag somewhere. So if you write it first, if you write the end of it first, then you're never going to forget it. And so the end tag for HTML is less than symbol, \HTML. So we've got our start tag and we've got our end tag, and they match exactly. And what I'm telling to your browser, be it Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Microsoft Edge, what I'm telling to your browser is everything between these two tags is going to be HTML, and you should treat it like HTML. So now we can actually start putting content in there. And the first bit of content we need is the head. So for making things clearer, I'm going to press Tab to give me a little bit of space just away from the side. I'm going to type in head. And as is good practice, I'm always going to close that tag first. So open head tag, close head tag. Oh, whoops. I've messed that up. Now, it's in the head of your website that all the details go, all the important information. Your user doesn't see this, but it's useful to have that. This is what makes Google think, this is a website that's worthwhile showing on the front page of Google. So inside the head tag, I'm going to start another tag, and I'm going to call that one title, because this is what appears in the tab. So what should my title be? What should my website be? Let's make a website for Technoclub. So let's call it Virtual Technoclub. So now I need to end my tag. So let's see what I've got here. I've got a start tag called title. Then I've got the contents of that tag. Then I've got an end tag for title. Before I go on, I should double check that I've got a start and end tag for everything. I start with HTML, I end with HTML. I start with head, I end with head. I start with title, I end with title. Okay, that means I'm good to go. I can start. I can basically launch my first web page. And to do that, I'm going to go File, Save As. Now I'm going to save it in a folder. And I've created a folder already called My Website. And that's where I'm going to stick it. And I need to, first of all, give it a name. Now, when you're creating a website, your main page, the very first page that a user lands on, needs to be called index. I-N-D-E-X. So I-N-D-E-X. If you find a website called index, that means that is the front page. And index, of course, is going to be a HTML file. So I'm going to select HTML from this list. If you don't have that list, if you're using something like Notepad or TextEdit, you can actually type .html on the end. Where is it? Gosh, my eyes. There we are. So that should save as index.html. Let's save that. And let's have a little look in my files to see whether it is there. Yes, it is. Oh, no, it didn't save properly. Ignore me for a second. Blah, blah, blah. Just fixing things. There we are. Index.html. Can I view file extensions? Yeah, let's view file extensions. So that is the first page. So how do I see it? Well, if I double click on this, it should automatically open in a browser. And if it doesn't automatically open, I can click and drag it into a browser. But I'll just open it here. And there we are. That's my first web page. Isn't it brilliant? I like how it's completely blank and there's nothing on there. But wait a second, what's this in the top left? In the top left, the tab says Virtual Technoclub. So our title has worked. And yeah, that's it. That is my first web page. Now let's start adding some content to it. So I'm going to go back to my file and I'm going to edit it. No. There we are. And we're going to add some more content to it. Now, we've got the head. The next important part of any HTML file is the body. So directly underneath head, see I'm doing this after head has been closed, I'm going to type in body. And as is always, good practice, I'm going to have the close of that as well. So the body is where you put everything that is visible to the user, everything that they can see. So you can put in some text. So this is some terrible text. Oh, I wrote test instead. But that's not going to work properly because I haven't told my website what type of text that is. And so this is where we come on to the first tag I'm going to show you, and that's the heading tag. So in HTML, there are 6 heading tags, and each tag gives a different style to the heading. So the first tag I'm going to use is H1. So H1, this is my first heading, usually the most eye-catching part of a website. What should I do after I finish this? I need to end the tag. So I got my start H1 here, and I got my end H1 here. So when I save it, I should be able to go back to my browser, that one, and when I click refresh, it should find my file again. Let's click refresh. And there we are. I've written a heading. And yeah, that's basically it. It's just a case of putting in different tags. So let's look at some of the other heading tags. I'm going to go back to my file editor and making sure I'm still inside body. Let's have a H2 tag. H2. This is my second heading. Let's save that. And let's open it up in this again. And there we are. Can you see how the second one is a different style to the first one? It's a different size. And as you go down the headings, as you go from H1 to H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, they get smaller and smaller. And let's demonstrate that. Let's do a H3. This is H3. This is H4. Notice I'm being very careful, extremely careful, to make sure I match the tags exactly. So when I start a H3, I make sure I end a H3 in the right place, and I'm not doing it on the wrong line. This is H5. Okay, I'm going to click Save, and leave that up for just a second. And let's reload it. Can you see how they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller? And that's the heading system in HTML. And when you come to making websites, you'll be using headings constantly. They're one of the most useful tools for making things look nice. Okay, so we've done the headings. What should you do underneath each heading? Well, a heading's going to be, any bit of text that's a title or something. Let's do what goes underneath, a paragraph. Now, a paragraph is just P, a P tag. So this is my paragraph. Notice how it tends to be a usually longer text. In fact, if I press enter, it doesn't matter if I cross several lines as long as I am careful with where I put the spaces. And make sure I close that tag. So we've got something that's a little bit longer, a little bit more chunky, a proper paragraph. And as is always, this is the mantra, this is the thing you have to learn. Save, browser, reload. And there we are. Oh, I've already noticed spelling mistakes. That's one problem with websites. When you're making them raw like this, you can never find... you can be almost certainly guaranteed that you'll make a spelling mistake, no matter how many times you check it. But yeah, that's just life. Life is just a series of spelling mistakes. At least for me, that is. But there we are. We have there one very ugly and, let's be honest, awful website. But we've got one, and that's what matters. Now, let's take a little bit of a break from making things that are nice and pretty. Let's just make it as terrible as we can. Let's add some fun little tags that no one likes, and in fact, no one uses anymore. And one of the most well-known ones is marquee. M-A-R-Q-U-E-E. This one's a great one because whatever you type in here gets... I'll leave it as that. I'll leave it as a surprise. I'm making sure I close the marquee tag. Let's click save. Let's reload. And there we are. Whatever I type in here gets moved across the screen in a really ugly way that no one likes. And once it finishes, it goes back to the start. So let's complete that thought. Let's reload that. I'm not sure how well you can see it on the screen, but there we are. It's just going back and forth across the screen, and it will repeat forever and ever and ever. And that used to be so popular in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So popular. But if you do that now, you're not going to get very many visitors to your website. But it's always a fun one to have. Anyway. So let's get rid of that marquee. What other things can we put in there? Well, what's the point of a website if you don't have any images? And that's the next thing we're going to get. Let me just grab some images from somewhere because I'm pretty sure I don't actually have any on this computer. And let's create some. Let's create some. I'm going to go into my documents, and you might remember these images from the Conway's Game of Life stream I did. Just to remind you, I had a load of houses that I just knocked together in an editing package. Yeah, I'll use these. Saves me having to go and download a whole load of new ones. Now, notice that I've put every single of my images inside the same folder as my first web page. And this is what I was talking about when it comes to the back end of the website. It's all about how folders are structured and how they're arranged. So we could have them out here, but we could even go a little bit further. We can even make a new folder and call that folder images. We could put them all in there. So now I've got a folder of images and it contains all of these. There's a secret to how I set up the stream loading. But anyway. And now we need to actually be able to reference these images, to know where they are, to actually put them inside the inside our web page. And to do that, we're going to use one important tag, the img tag, obviously standing for image. Now notice that I've written img and I've put a space after it, and I haven't completed the last part of the tag making. And that's because we have to put more content in here. We have to give it more information. We have to tell it what image it's going to use. And to do that, we have to type in src, which stands for source, equals, and then we need to put the location of our image inside some speech marks. Those aren't speech marks, that's speech marks. Okay. So if I look back in my folders, we need to look at where our website is. Our website, our index.html, is currently sitting just here in the root folder. The root folder is the folder that sort of contains everything to do with the website. And we need to find where one of these images are. So let's find the path to the image we want to use. So first of all, I go into a folder called images. So that's the first part of our path. Let's say we're doing H1. Well, that's the photo we want, so that's the second part of our path. We need to go images, H1. Images, H1. That's our path. So inside these speech marks, we need to write down what that path is. And so it starts with a backslash, because that means we start in our root folder. Then what's the next part? We go to images next. Okay, and after images, where did we go from there? Well, we went straight to the image, so we went straight to h1.png. Now, if you didn't have an images folder, you could just write in here h1.png or whatever the name of your file is. But we did have an images folder, so I do need to include that. So that's the source of the image sorted. Now I can go ahead and I can end that tag. And even though it looks like we've finished everything we need to do with image, it's one of those weird ones where I still need to end it with a tag. So I've got image, source equals, speech mark, and then the name of the location of my image, close speech mark, and then a close image tag. Let's see if this works. Let's click save. Let's go to our browser and let's click reload. What have I done here? Have I been a numpty again? Yeah, sorry, I've been a numpty, ignore me. It didn't need that first slash. It just needs to be images / h1.png. Forget that first slash. But once you have that, if you have the location of your image right, your image now appears in your website. I'll just go through showing how to do a second image. We'll get on to sizing images in a bit. For sizing images, we need to use a little bit of CSS. Let's just add a second one. So image src equals. Now I stored mine in a folder called images. Which image shall we choose? Let's go for H13. Okay. Now I need to make sure that I include the file extension of the image. So if it's a PNG image, it needs to have .png at the end. If it's a JPEG image, it needs to have .jpeg. If it's a GIF, it needs to have .gif on the end. And as always, it needs an open tag and a close tag. So that should show us two images next to each other. Now, this is where things get a little bit exciting. We're going to start with a little bit of CSS, but we're going to be doing inline CSS. And what inline CSS means, well, let me describe what CSS is. There's saying too many S's here. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And CSS is what gives your website, makes it look good. Makes it look like it was made this decade rather than in the 90s. CSS is all about making a website pretty. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick our image, and inside this first tag, so after image, after src, after the last speech mark, but before we get to the greater than symbol, I'm going to type in width equals, and then in the speech marks, I'm going to give it a pixel value. So if I want it 100 pixels wide, I type in 100 px for pixels. If I want it 200 pixels wide, I type in 200 px. Let's have it at, let's make it massive, just for fun. Let's make it 900 pixels wide. Click Save. Go to this one. And it's now a massive image. Let's make it tiny. Let's make it 10 pixels wide. Click Save. And, I don't know whether you can see that on stream, but it's just sort of there. It's that small. Someone's asking me, how do you put an image in the top tab bar? And what you mean is by the title here, by the tab, you're looking for something called the favicon, or the fav icon. And let's see. I can't quite remember the tag for a favicon, but it's It's a little bit complicated. You'll have to search that up yourself, I'm afraid. And all you're looking for is literally the word. I'll type it out in Notepad. Fav icon, all one word. Literally just search up in Google how to add a fav icon. It's a little bit too involved for this stream. But anyway, let's return that back to 100 pixels. Otherwise, we'll be straining our eyes trying to see. There you are. That's about 100 pixels. Now, there comes a problem. What happens if someone's trying to look at your website on a mobile phone? Or maybe they're trying to look on your website on an old CRT monitor like this one. Or what happens if they're trying to look at your website on a projector or a 4K monitor or something massive? Whatever screen size the person has will change how your website looks. And that's really hard to work with. It's really hard to deal with. And one of the ways that makes it a little bit easier is by using percentages. So if we look at our images here, at the moment, this image on the left, I set that to 100 pixels wide. Now 100 pixels wide on my screen looks really quite, it's a fair size. But if my friend came along on a different screen, on a 4K screen, 100 pixels would be absolutely tiny, so tiny they couldn't see it. So rather than setting it to a pixel value, we can set it to a percentage. We can tell it how much, what percentage of the screen do you want to use up. So if I set that to, rather than 100 pixels, I change that to 100%. Click Save. If my calculations are correct, as soon as I press reload, it should take up the entire width of the screen. It should take up 100% of the screen. Let's see. And there we are. It's taking up exactly 100%. And let's see what happens if I resize my window. Let's make it even smaller. I've got a tiny window now, and it still takes up 100%. It's actually scaling as I resize my website, as I resize my browser window. And just to prove a point, let me change that back to 100 pixels. Let's reload that. We can see that no matter how much I resize my browser window, it still stays the exact same size. So in this modern day and age, percentage is always better than pixels. Let's change that back to 100%. There we are. What happens if I wanted that smaller? Well, I choose a smaller percentage. Let's say I want it to only take up to 20%. Let's click Save. There we are. It only takes up 20%. And when I resize my window, it gets bigger and smaller. Okay. That just... Should I cover that? No, we'll skip on to CSS for the moment. So, I've got a basic enough website. How do I make it pretty? How do I make it look good? That's where CSS comes in. Now, we've done a little bit of inline CSS. Now we're going to do a bit of external CSS. Let me just... There we are. So, we need to tell our browser that we're going to be looking at a different file. And that file is going to give our HTML shape. It's going to give it something that makes it look nice. So before I do anything, I need to go ahead and create that file. So I'm going to go and click File, New. This will be different for whatever text editor you're using. I've got a new file here, and this is going to be my CSS file. And this is where I give instructions for each of the elements of the website to look different. So let's go back to my website. Let's say I want heading 1 to be purple and heading 2 to be orange, let's say. Now I can't do anything here to make them purple or orange. I have to do it in the style sheet, in the CSS file. So we want to focus on H1 first. So in my CSS file, I type in H1, curly bracket, and this is where I give it instructions. And there are several different instructions we can give it. And let's go for, let's change its color. So I'm going to give it its color instruction. And for that, I need to type in color, but with the American spelling, so no U. Then I need a colon, and then I need to give it a value. And this value needs to be a hex value. It needs to be the hexadecimal value of a color. And we can find that out by going on the internet and typing hex value of, let's pick a color, let's go purple. Okay, let's pick indigo is quite a nice color. Actually, let's go medium purple. And we need that number there, 9370dB. And that's the hex value of that color. So I'm back in my style sheet, and I'm going to type it out, or copy and paste. And notice I include the hashtag, or what it used to be known as the pound symbol. And after that, I need to put a semicolon. And on the next line, I need to end it with a curly bracket. So what we're doing is we're saying to our computer, to our browser, I want you to take every single H1 and I want you to make it this color. So let's click File, Save As, and I'm going to call this styles.css. And it needs the .css part of it there as well. And it doesn't matter what the first part of it is, but as long as you've got the .css. And I click Save. Then if we look at our website, absolutely nothing has happened. And that's because we haven't told our HTML to point towards the CSS file. So I'm going to go back into Notepad and I'm going to go back into my website. Do I need to tell it in here somewhere to point towards my CSS file? And it's a bit of a tricky line of HTML, but once you've got it, it should stay, I'll admit it, I have to look this up every single time. I always forget it. But it is link rel equals style sheet href equals, and this is where you need to put in the name of your thing. So I called mine styles.css. Type equals text/css media equals all. And then finally, I finish that with a slash and that symbol. Let me type that out in chat for anyone who wants to copy and paste. And when I click save, hopefully, unless I've made everything go wrong, as soon as I click reload, we should have a purple heading. Fingers crossed. Boom. Purple heading. See, it's a lot of extra effort to go to, but CSS is incredibly powerful. Oh, sorry, just checking on Discord. If your image doesn't show, you might have the wrong location for your image. Just double check that you know which folder your image is in and what file extension your image is. Is it a .jpeg, is it a .png, or is it a .gif? But going back to CSS, we can do anything we like with this. CSS is incredibly powerful. So if I want to make H1 larger, then I can give it a new instruction. I can say font size. Let's have it at 40 pixels. Notice that after every instruction I have a colon plus the size, or plus the value, followed by a semicolon. What else can I do? I could have font family, and this is where I set the font. I could have Verdana, which is my favourite font. Yeah, let's leave it at that. And when I click reload, it's changed the font and it's made it massive. Let's make it bigger. Let's just make it, let's say, 400 pixels. Because why not? There's no rules. There we are. It is now far too massive to even fit on the screen. Okay. Maybe I don't like purple. Maybe it's a little bit too, what's the word? A little bit too colourful for me. Well, we can put in any hex value you like. So if I go over onto here, and let's go to the Technoclub's website. No, not Technocampus. Oh, Technocamps. There we are. Say I wanted this grey colour up here. Well, a lot of browsers will actually tell you what colour that is. So I'm on Firefox. If I go into Web Developer, I can use the eyedropper tool. And it tells me that the hex value of that grey is 3F403E. What's this blue? This yellow. This yellow is E7 CB1C. Let's do that. Yeah. So let's make it grey. Let's click Save. I should have it as completely grey now. And there we are. It's gone to grey. So I have a little experiment with hex values. If you play with them long enough, you will actually sort of get a feeling for what things should be. So if I wanted something that was blue, I would have something like 1111 FF. I hope that's blue. I hope I've done that right. Yeah, that's blue. The one that everyone asks for is, what is black? Well, black is 000000. And that's perfect black. And what is white? Well, white is FF. Oh. Oh dear. Oh, it's always like this. Oh, every time you want to do something, just Windows comes and ruins your day. Go away, Windows. Thank you. Sorry, as I was saying, FF. Let's click Save. And this should be white. And we can tell it's white because you can't see it until you highlight it. A couple of people asking, how do you get it to use different fonts? Well, when it comes to fonts, whatever you write in CSS, the browser of the user will try and use the closest font to it. So I could type in Verdana. Some people are asking, how do you get Comic Sans? I think you can just do Comic Sans. Does that work? I don't know. I've never tried it. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work on my browser. And for that, I'm quite relieved. Comic Sans is not the nicest. But you can actually give it a list of fonts to try. So I've said I want Verdana first. If it can't find Verdana, if I type in Arial, it'll go for Arial next. And if it can't find Arial, I could tell it to go to Sans Serif. I should probably change that back to black because I'm fed up of having to highlight it. There you are. So it goes to Verdana first. If Verdana is not installed, it'll go to Arial. If Arial is not installed, it'll default to sans serif. And the code to get that is in the CSS file. You just change the font family, and then you type the name of the font. Does it have Times New Roman? Interesting. I'm going to try that. Times New Roman. It does have Times New Roman. Now, there's something to be careful with this, though. I can actually change the settings of my browser so that it'll change everything to the right font. For example, if I can't read Times New Roman, I could say, okay, change everything to Comic Sans for me, and it will. So when you're designing a website, you need to bear in mind that some users will have different fonts, and they'll set their fonts differently. Right. So I'm just going to round up a couple other things with CSS. We can highlight any tag we want to here. So if I use P, I can tell everything that's a paragraph that I want it to be. What do I want my paragraph to be? Let's make paragraphs italic. So font style italic. I'm making sure I close that. When I load my website, we can now see that the paragraph that I wrote is in italic. What else can I do? If we wanted to change things and with how they look, I could say font. No, not font, sorry. Text align. And I can actually write center, and center spelt the American way, and it should center my text in the page. And if we look at this paragraph now, we can see that it's centered. I can even change that to right if I wanted to. And now that's aligned to the right. Let's change that back to center. Yeah, here's another thing we can do. Because CSS can target any single tag, let's tag the images. Let's say image. I want you to be width colon 40%. it would help if I could actually spell width. Now, what I'm going to add here is something that's a little bit interesting. And I'm going to start talking about margins and padding. Now, a margin refers to how much space there is around the outside of something. And padding refers to how much space there is around the inside of something. So if I say the margin of my image, well, I have to say if the margin to the right is, let's say, 20 pixels, that means it'll have 20 pixels of space on the right. So let's actually load this up and see if that works. Do my images have 20 pixels of space towards the right? And I don't know whether you can see it, but there's now a gap in between these two images of exactly 20 pixels. And if I set the margin left to be, let's go mad, let's go 50 pixels. When I reload it, we should see that there is a 50 pixel gap on the left. So 3, 2, 1, there we are. Now this is going to be 50 pixels. And note that this one is going to be 50 pixels plus 20 pixels for 70 total, because this one's got 20 pixel space on the right, and this one's got 50 pixels space on the left. Right, what else can I talk about? Don't want to do padding. Let's actually change the whole body of the thing. Now remember that when we looked at our website, we had the head and the body. Well, if I want a CSS rule to apply to the entire body, I can actually reference it in the CSS, and I do that by body. And I can give it some rules, so I can make it a default page size, or I can actually change the background. Let's make the background, and let's make it horrible blue again. So where's my, there you are, hashtag 0000FF. So with this rule, I should have made the background completely blue. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a whirl. And there we are. We have the most ugly website ever made. But what happens if I wanted to add more backgrounds around things? Let's say I wanted a background around the second heading. Well, that's simple. I just go back into my CSS, I reference the second heading, and I give it the background instruction. And let's say, let's make it, let's have it green. So 00FFFF. Save. Reload. Well, I got the color wrong, but there we are. I've now given a background to the second heading. And essentially, when you bring this all together, you should have a fairly, good-looking website. And we can actually check what websites are looking like. We can use the website inspector on any browser. That's the wrong button. If you go to Web Developer Inspector, let's dock to the right. This shows me every element of a uh, of a website. So let's have a look at this image tag here. So we can see that on the Technocamp's website, this is an image, and its source is it's in a folder called themes, in a folder called Technocamps, in a folder called assets, in a folder called image, and the file is resources cta.png. So that's good. Let's see what this part is. This is a paragraph, and there's the paragraph. You can see we've got the start paragraph tag and the end paragraph tag. What's this bit here? This is a H2, so it's a heading of the second size. And if we look down in the inspector, we can actually see the CSS for it. Oh, someone's just asked me, how do we do multiple pages? I should definitely mention that because I meant to, completely forgot. Thanks for reminding me. To do multiple pages, we need to make multiple HTML files. So if you head back into your website folder, if we add a second page in here, so my first page is index.html. If I go here and I make a new file, and this is, let me just pause a second whilst I fill it out with skeleton code. There's an annoying amount that you need just to get one thing working. It's very annoying. This is the second page / body. That's everything we need. File, save as. I'm going to call this page2.html. Okay. So if we look in our files, we now have a main page and a page 2, and we need to link one to the other. And to do that, I'm going to go into, let's just delete that, just to make it neater and easier to see. I'm going to go into my web page, and I'm going to use my linking tag, which is a href equals, and you need to put the name of your second page in. So I called mine page2.html, and then we can close that. And now we need to have something that the user can actually click. So click here to go to second page. /a. Remember, we open the tag and we need to end the tag. And if I click save, go back to my website, click reload, and we can see down here I've now got a hyperlink, and when I click that hyperlink, it takes me to the second page. Yeah, I hope that's somewhat useful. It's a very brief and incredibly fast glance at making a website. They can get very complicated, and they can be, I hate to say it, slightly dangerous to make a website because, of course, it's going out there to the public. What we've done today is fine. It's keeping it on our computer. And when it's just on our computer, no one else can access it. But if you are wanting to make a website, just have a little think to yourself first, am I staying safe? Anyway, I hate to end on a miserable note, but I hope that's been useful. And if you want any more website guidance, I'm happy to provide it. And if not, then we'll carry on with our normal Technoclub stuff. So that's it from me for today, and have a wonderful week.